everybody, to another episode of the Blazer Victory Podcast. John Duncan here, and I'm joined as always with my co-host Darion Smith and Jimmy Marion. Fellas, we got some exciting news today where the UAB football 2023 schedule was officially released. It seemed like it took forever, but believe it or not, there are still a couple other conferences behind the American that have not released their schedules. That is the MAC, Mountain West, and I think Sun Belt. So, but regardless, guys, Darion first, how are you doing this evening?
I am doing well, sir. How are you guys?
Good. Jimmy, you doing all right?
Doing great. Ready to talk some football.
Yes. Well, before we get deep diving into that schedule, just want to have a talk with our listeners, our readers. www.blazervictory.com. Thank you guys so much for those that have already checked out our articles and our podcast on our website. If you have not, go check it out now. blazervictory.com. Articles, podcast, merch, about me, everything in one website. blazervictory.com. Now, I want to mention this too. We dropped our interview with Trent Dilfer last Thursday, I believe. Yeah, Thursday, because we did it Wednesday. We dropped it Thursday. And I just, I appreciate everybody so far that has given that interview a listen. We all thought that it was a fantastic interview. Trent shared a lot of information. Trent took his time, or he allotted some time out of his busy schedule for the Blazer Victory podcast to come into his office at the athletic facility and spend about an hour with us. I don't think some people realize how great that is for the Blazer Victory brand. Like, before some other outlets, Blazer Victory was able to go in there and not do a Zoom call, not do a Skype call or whatever. We were able to sit down in Trent Dilfer's office with Trent for about 40 minutes. Like, guys, that is huge for our brand. That is huge for Blazer Victory. That is huge for you guys. That is just a testament of you guys supporting us these last 3 or 4 years, however long I've been doing this. And I just wanted to shout that out. Like, if you have not given that interview a listen, go to blazervictory.com or Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. You can find the Blazer Victory podcast on that platform and listen to it, because Darion can attest to it too. That was a fantastic interview that we had with a FBS head football coach. Like, what other FBS head coach is given a podcast nearly 40 minutes to sit down and have a deep, interview?
Yes,
you don't see it anywhere. And to see that the respect that we get, that the Blazer Victory, and guys, if you've been listening to this since day one, I never brag. And I'm really not trying to brag. I'm just trying to let our listeners know how big of an impact that they've had on our platform, on the Blazer Victory podcast, and how we continue to grow, and just the respect that we are garnishing, from everybody. But that was a big deal. If you didn't catch it, go back, blazervictory.com. We're still going to stick it at the top of the website. Go click on it, listen to it, support the Blazer Victory podcast. And Darion, I know you had some thoughts you wanted to share too.
Yeah, because it's like we're local guys. We are Birmingham. We stay here. We are UAB. I'm a former player, and we're all fans. Jimmy, John, and we're all fans, and just thankful to the UAB athletic facility, like everybody over there, for just faculty, for just letting us become media members and be affiliated with the team in some kind of sense, media wise, and then to show us the respect. That goes to show you that they have to, somebody over there is listening, right? And they respect what we are saying to some degree. And to sit down, I think there was supposed to be like a 15-minute spot with Trent. Trent sat down and gave us, we were, like John said, we were there for over an hour, but 36 minutes of podcast content, and not just BS. It was quality. Like, this was stuff that I feel like if it was on a national stage, a lot of stuff he would have said would have been, a lot of clips would have been aggregated, and it would have been shared thousands of times over. And that's why I was like, this is something that's to not be glossed over. I don't care how people feel if they feel like we're bragging and blah blah blah. No, it's this is the truth. It's a big deal. That's an FBS coach, like you said, at a D1 college, and it's Trent Dilfer. Like Trent has been all over doing national spots everywhere, and for him to sit down and give us 36 quality minutes. I don't know any other radio show or all of these national spots he's been on. I don't know any one of them that's had him for that long and been able to talk like that. So that's important. Shout out to the coaching staff over there. They're genuine people. The reason it went so long is because I said it right after the pod. I was like, man, I forgot that we was doing a podcast. We were just talking.
Right.
Just genuinely talking. And I think, guys, go back and listen to that. It's a big deal. It's a big moment, especially for the local media here, I feel like. And it deserves its spot. It shouldn't be glossed over. I wish there was more buzz about it. It was some, people gave us our props, but it should be more buzz than what it was because of how they gave local media a chance like that. I feel like that should be highlighted.
100% agree. Jimmy, do you have any thoughts before we move on?
No, obviously I wasn't a part of the interview, but I was telling you guys it was exciting for me, just as a fan, to listen to the interview, and just kudos to both John and Darion for getting to the point where you were able to get interview with Trent as you did, and then to execute the way that you did, and just shout out to UAB, the football team retweeted the interview, which was awesome. And you guys were saying, y'all got more time, and I think Ryan Russillo got on his podcast for Trent Dilfer. So, but it was just an awesome interview, and to me, this is just the beginning.
Definitely agree, and shout out to Trent again for giving us some time. Shout out to Ted for making it happen. That whole staff, just we look forward to plenty more moments like that, and diving in with the UAB football staff. But guys, we've got a schedule finally, and it's I will say, I don't know, I don't even know where we want to start. So the bye week, I actually do like where the bye week lands. It's a little late, but I'd rather have that as opposed to super early on. It comes on October 28th in between two home games. But guys, should we just name this? Should we go ahead and read the schedule off for those that don't know?
Yeah, it's a tough schedule.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll go ahead and do that. But hey, first, again, blazervictory.com. I shared an article today, just kind of briefly going over each game and the schedule. But the season kicks off Thursday night, August 31st, as UAB hosts North Carolina A&T. Next week, they travel to Statesboro to take on Georgia Southern. After that, UAB will host Louisiana, so that's two Sun Belt teams in a row. September 23rd, UAB will travel to Athens, Georgia to take on the Georgia Bulldogs. The very next week, September 30th, UAB's first game, or conference game, as members of the American Athletic Conference. They will travel down to New Orleans to take on the Tulane Green Wave. UAB's then home against South Florida, then travels to UTSA on October 14th. Battle for the Bones is back in Protective Stadium, October 21st. Then they have the bye week. And then November the 4th, UAB welcomes FAU. The next week, on Veterans Day, UAB travels to Navy. Golly, can you believe we're playing Navy on Veterans Day? Like, I heard somebody tell me, I think it was my wife. She was like, you can't beat Navy on Veterans Day. And I said, we better hope they do. And then they close out with two more games at home, home finale against Temple, and then at North Texas to end the season. And that game will either be on Black Friday, November 24th, or Saturday, November 25th. The league office will announce that on October the 9th. Guys, we knew about those 4 non-conference games, but sheesh. At Georgia the 23rd, at Tulane the 30th, South Florida at home, at UTSA, and then Memphis all before the bye. Good grief!
Hey,
I mean,
it was hey, let's schedule the national champions, the CUSA champions, and the AAC champions. Like,
golly.
and we have all of those games away on the road. All the championship teams are on the road. I'm like, okay, that's like, and they're all before the bye.
Mm.
You know, that's tough, man. And I'm looking, you know, North Carolina A&T is the only game. I hate saying it like this because you got to respect each and earn every win. But if I'm looking at this from a fan perspective, North Carolina A&T is the only gimme, right?
It should
After
be
that, there's no more gimmies on this schedule. Like none, zero. At Georgia Southern, that is not a gimme, guys.
Nope.
That is a tough game. And Louisiana, that is a tough game. Like there's not one game that we can take a break on here, you know, or just it's gonna be tough. But Jimmy, man, I think that we could. What do you see us being before the bye in your analysis? What do you think this team will record wise would be?
When I look at the schedule, I think we have, if you want to compare it to what is the middle of the schedule, a favorable start with the North Carolina A&T, Georgia Southern, Louisiana. That's not an easy start, but it's favorable compared to weeks, I believe it's 4 through 8. So for me, it's going to be critical that we can start off no worse than 2-1. Obviously, 3-0, excuse me, would be the preference, but that middle stretch, weeks 4 through 8, we've already talked about who the opponents are, is going to be very difficult. So in my mind, you know, can we get off to a fast start? Can we get off to a 3-0 start? Really get things rolling, and then can we survive those middle weeks, that tough stretch, weeks 4 through 8, as we get into the bye? Will we be limping into the bye? You know, I look at those 5 games, and I think if we want to be realistic, 2 and 3 will probably be the most realistic outcome in that middle 5-game stretch. 3 and 2 would be exceeding expectations in my mind. So if we're looking at those first, just doing a quick analysis here, you know, I would hope that we could again go 2-1 in that initial stretch. 2 and 3 after that. My math's not great. What is that? 4 and 4? Somewhere around that mark?
Sounds right.
So, I mean, if you can get to that point, I look at the last back end of the schedule, the 4 games at the end. And again, I think that's favorable. After the bye, those 4 games towards the end of the season, I think that we can finish strong with 3-1. So to me, it's all going to be about, can we get off to a quick start? Can we really survive and exceed expectations there in the middle? Can we win maybe 3 out of those 5 games there in the middle stretch? And can we finish strong? And I think that we can have a good season. It's just going to be, like many of you, I looked at the schedule and my first reaction was, hey, I'm excited. And then the second reaction was, wow, that's going to be tough. That's going to be a challenge, right? But it was really cool to see a lot of the coaches and the players today retweeting the schedule. You know, with this challenge comes opportunity. And, you know, I know that they have to be very excited to be presented with that opportunity. And hopefully they can, you know, hopefully they can do well.
Yeah, I agree, Jimmy. And I mean, we're sitting February 21st. But looking at that schedule, you've got to at least split between at Georgia Southern and Louisiana at home. Like, you've got to get to 2-1. Yeah, I'm with you guys. You know, NC A&T, North Carolina A&T. I mean, they're a decent FCS team. They're actually transitioning conferences now. Like UAB is. They're moving from the Big South to the CAA, the Colonial Athletic Association. But I mean, this was a team last year in the Big South that went to the conference championship game and lost to Gardner-Webb. So this is not a pushover FCS team. But that being said, UAB should. I mean, I don't know what the spread is, but UAB should cover it against North Carolina A&T. But at Georgia Southern and Louisiana, you've got 2 formidable Sun Belt opponents. I mean, you know, Georgia Southern, UAB was able to handle them last year in Protective Stadium. But, you know, Louisiana, they're always good in the Sun Belt. So you've got to at least split one. Hopefully get both of them, but you've got to at least get one of those. And I don't know about y'all, but week 2 of the football season has always been the Achilles heel for this UAB football program. You go back to last year with Liberty, you go back. I feel like they've only won a couple, and I should have better prepared for the podcast, but I remember they beat Akron one year, and I know they won another one week 2, but a lot of times they lose that week 2 matchup. So that is going to be important. I hope to be making the trip to Statesboro to see that game. Excited for Trent Dilfer and this team. His first opportunity at an FBS opponent. So I look forward to that. But Louisiana, yeah, they're always good in the Sun Belt. And then, Georgia. I mean, Georgia's Georgia. It's just, try to be competitive a little bit and just don't get any injuries, please. Yeah. I mean, I'm not even going to.
I saw that G on the schedule. I was like, is that Grambling State? We got that.
I wish it was. Hey, I'll take Grambling over Georgia now. But hey, to be what's the saying? To be the best, you have to beat the best.
Hey, man, listen, we're not there yet, dog. It's okay. Like, why do we keep scheduling Georgia? Is this something that's like
money?
Have they already? I know it's a money game, but have they already got this set up? We ain't gonna play Georgia out of the SEC. We can let's take our shot at Kentucky. Or like somebody like that. Like I like our chances. Like shoot, I'd rather take LSU if we got let's switch it up and go Alabama. I wish we could. Let's take our chances against anybody else in the SEC, honestly. But I just don't feel like playing Georgia again. Why we got to do this? I don't want to do this again. Not right now.
Right before Tulane.
Jesus Christ, bro.
Right before, like Jimmy just said, right before Tulane. But hey, exciting news though. They play Arkansas next year, or in 2024. So
no Georgia.
No Georgia in 2024.
Okay, all right, thank you, man. I don't want to play this team no more. We get it.
We need to talk about adding Vanderbilt or Kentucky. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Texas A&M, where you at?
Oh, Texas A&M. But I don't know. Like, that is such a tough stretch. Take South Florida, away. Granted, they've got a new coach. Like, there's a lot of programs in this AAC that are, are transitioning to a new coach. South Florida, FAU, UAB, Navy. There are a bunch of schools. Charlotte. Well, UAB didn't play Charlotte this year, but
I think it's 5 out of our 12 opponents have new coaches.
Sheesh, that is insane. But I don't. So, Darion, what do you think? So, I'm kind of like with Jimmy. At the end of the day, we'll get to this in a little bit, but of course, UAB as a program should be competing for conference championships. But you've got to be kind of realistic. When you make a transition when you're moving up to a new conference. Of course, we'd love it if UAB was competing for the AAC championship. And I mean, you guys might feel that way now. We'll get into it later, but if you can get, 3 or 4 wins coming off of that front end of the schedule, as Jimmy mentioned, that back half doesn't look as bad. With North Texas having a new head coach too, you can get 6, 7, maybe 8 wins. Get to a good bowl game. But Darion, give us your thoughts on that first half of the schedule. What are you thinking? Are you with Jimmy and I, or are you less, more? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, on the zoom out. Trent Dilfer is definitely looking at the schedule, and Trent Dilfer definitely has one of those, 49-year-old war veteran dads. Like, so imagine he's like 5 years old that just took him by the leg and said, "Hey, son, go swim," and just threw him in the deep end and said, "Hey, you either gonna drown or you go swim or drown." He just threw him out there, and he's gonna there's no other way. It's just like baptism by fire. This is a tough schedule for but one thing, and another zoom out thought I had was, when was the last time as UAB fans that we had this feeling of, this is tough. Like, and it feels kind of good to be like, hey, if I'm a player, I'm looking at this like, oh man, we gotta work. Because honestly, I think we've been kind of in this comfortable spot. Like, schedules come out and we kind of be like, okay, we circle UTSA, oh, let's try to get this Liberty game. And we've had all these expectations being in the NCUSA. It's like we're the big dogs. We should win, 90% of these games. But now we're looking at this, it's like we're gonna have to fight. And just hearing us talk, it's like, man, we gotta actually try to stay afloat. And then, it's something about the challenge that I'm relishing right now. Like, I'm excited. I wanted to see how we're gonna come out and respond. Trent, we get to see what he's made of right off the bat. Yeah. Right off the bat. So we don't have long before those questions are answered. I felt like, sometimes in the Clark era, sometimes in the BV era, we kind of had to wait to really see the full picture of what we were working with. And honestly, under BV, we never really got a full answer. It was always just a mixed bag.
Yeah.
So that's my zoom out thoughts of just being like excited overall and seeing what Trent, how he responds, him and that whole coaching staff. But
I think so too, Darren. Like these players have to be excited that a lot of these games, they're going to be on linear networks. ESPNU, like forget the stadium stuff. I mean, you'll still have some ESPN Plus games because that's written into the AAC contract, and we don't know the TV and for a couple more months when that's announced, at least for the first couple weeks. And I do like too, the AAC, they do not announce the whole TV schedule for the season. What they do is they announce for the first couple weeks. And as it should be, they wait as it gets closer and they move the more intriguing and meaningful matchups to linear networks like ESPN2, ESPN, ESPNU, and then they'll move the other stuff to ESPN Plus, as opposed to Conference USA just doing whatever and throwing the whole schedule out at once.
Facebook.
BN Sports, throwback. But yeah, you've got to be excited as a player, knowing that you see these big matchups on paper right now and knowing that, hey, my mom and dad may not be able to make it to this game in Georgia or make it to this game in San Antonio, but they're going to be able to watch it on ESPN2 or ESPN News or ESPNU. Like, they don't have to go plug in an antenna or, put it on Facebook or, whatever. Like, it's exciting. But, kind of zooming out, I guess let's just go ahead and get into this discussion. Well, no, actually, reel it back. Let's go to the second half. So we talked about going through at Georgia, at Tulane, South Florida at home, and then we go at UTSA, rivalry game with Memphis. Actually, let's start there. What are y'all's thoughts on having the rivalry game with Memphis on October 21st? Does it seem too early in y'all's opinion? Because it seems a little early to me. Like I kind of like those rivalry matchups for November.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be later on. I was looking at it being one of those, sometime in November, maybe the last conference game we had. That's what I would have been happy with. Just kind of ending it with a bang. When is rivalry week? When is it?
I mean, it's technically the last 2 weeks of the season. Now, I wouldn't want it on the last. I wouldn't want it on the last week of the year unless they played on Black Friday, because, I mean, as much as we can all admit, the Iron Bowl is always going to be the most attractive, in the state on the last week of the year. But if you had that like on Black Friday, like if you played UAB Memphis on Black Friday for Battle for the Bones, who is not tuning in? Like, Protective would be jumping, especially if both programs are having good years. Like, but maybe that was something UAB and Memphis didn't have control over, So instead, they stuck it on October 21st. So I'll be there. I know you guys will be there. Just hope Memphis brings a good crowd and get this rivalry started again. But really the back half, FAU, Tom Herman. They should be. It's just kind of hard to project how they're going to be. I see them being good. At Navy is going to be not a rebuild because they're still going to run the triple option, but Nia Montalolo is no longer there for the first time in like 12 years. Temple was not good last year. North Texas is transitioning to a new coach. So I feel like if UAB can, I think this is what Jimmy said earlier, if they can just make it to the bye week. After the bye week, it gets a little lighter on the guys. I mean, I'm not dogging FAU, Navy, Temple, North Texas. I'm just saying when you stack them up compared to, the other teams, then I mean it's just no contest. Like if UAB can get four, I mean if they can get five in that front half and get a couple more, we might be talking about competing for a AAC championship. But Jimmy, what are your thoughts on the back half of the season?
I look at it and it's more favorable. You look at I don't know if you've seen, John, the first preseason SP Plus rankings. You see those came out?
I did not see that. What? Tell us about it.
Well, you don't want to know where UAB's ranked. They put UAB at they put UAB at 98. So that's pretty far back. But when you look at these last four games and you look at some of the projections preseason SP Plus for FAU, Navy, Temple, North Texas, they're all in the low to high 80s. I think it's Navy's at 97. If you look at the first half of the schedule, these are the teams that are more on the lower side of what we're going to face all season long. So, of course, you've got Georgia at 1, Tulane at 37. South Florida is kind of an outlier. Same with Georgia Southern. They're a little bit higher. They're north of 100. But, when you compare it to the other conference opponents like UTSA and Memphis, they're right there at 60 and 61. Even Louisiana's at 75. Again, I mentioned Tulane. So if you look at the conference schedule and you start looking at FAU 81, Navy 97, Temple 88, UNT 84. So, I mean, the metrics will tell you right there that the back end is going to be more favorable for us. So again, it's going to all be about fast start, survive in the middle, finish strong, and ultimately, I think that our expectation, and we might be transitioning that next about what the expectations are for the season, but for me personally, I can see bowl eligibility. Not saying it's going to be easy, but I think that for me is the baseline of what our expectations have been and should be going forward, even with the increase in the competition. One more note on the SP Plus is when you're looking at the preseason projections and you're looking at an average rating and you're comparing that to the preseason projections from the year prior, so going into 2022. In 2022, the average ranking for our opponents, SP Plus, was 90. Going into this year, right now, it's 73. So that's a net, increase of 17 spots. So, I mean, these are very early February ratings, but it just kind of speaks a little bit to the statistics in the early projections that this is on paper going to be a much more difficult schedule.
Oh, it is. And, Jimmy, I agree with you. Like, I mean, of course, all three of our thoughts may change, when we get into spring ball or, we get into fall camp. Or, hey, if UAB rattles goes 3-0 into that Georgia game, definitely can change. But right now, February 21st, I think if UAB can get to bowl eligibility, I think that'll be a good first year for Trent Dilfer. I think anything else on top of that, with this schedule looking right now, February 21st, is just icing on the cake. So, going forward, after that, of course, we want to get back to that UAB standard, competing for conference championships in football. But this first year, transitioning up to the American Athletic Conference, I do think getting 6 or 7 wins to get to that bowl eligibility will be huge. At least looking at the schedule.
I'm curious to see what the odds makers will say. You look at the over-under for the season.
Yeah.
I would think we're accustomed to seeing that is the exact number I was thinking. I really think right now, if you had to put a number on it, you'd say over-under 5.5. And that seems odd, right? Because we're used to saying
like 7 or 8,
7.5, 8.5, right? But I would say over. I'm a fan, but I'm also looking at this realistically. I think the 98 rating that SP Plus has for UAB right now is tough, and I think it's too low. But that's me being a fan, right? But if you gave me 5.5 and you said over under, I'd take the slide over.
Yep. Yeah, 5.5, I would too. And I know for me, just looking at this, I'm more of an X's and O's. I'm gonna really be looking at our process, going in, and then also too, I've heard word that this team is not done. Like the roster construction of this team is not done. So hey, just putting that out there. I don't know what that means. I'm just putting that out there. But okay, so we got the roster construction thing. We have talent in the building. I think a lot of it is going to be about, maybe how adjustments, schemes, like identity, like all of those things, how in game, how we adjust and how we go about, because things can change. Like a new coach can come in and breathe a fresh air into the building, and it could be for the good, and so optimistically, just looking at it. And then like teams like Louisiana, it's like, oh, I feel like they're always up in the air. What version of Louisiana are we getting? I don't know.
Exactly, and they were 6-7 in last year without Billy Napier. So
didn't they end our home winning streak at Legion? Was that them that we played in the Friday night and they beat us?
2020.
Yeah, we need revenge for that one.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I still kind of blame myself for that loss though, because I was at the beach that I missed the game. So of course the one game I missed. so
it's a couple of teams I'm looking at like that. Like what version of Tulane are we getting?
They're gonna be good, dude. They are gonna be good. They bring back Michael Pratt, Willie. They're gonna be good. They are already, them and UTSA should be the favorites to win the league. If I'm guessing, but yeah, they're gonna be legit.
And
but
what version of USF?
True.
What version of USF are we getting? It's a whole bunch of teams that I wonder, like, what are they bringing? And I get, so if we stamping, let's say we are stamping, of course, Georgia, Tulane and UTSA, right? I feel like everybody outside of those three really, and you know what? We can get UTSA. I don't care what nobody say. We can get UTSA. We're familiar with them. We can get those guys. I'm not putting them on some kind of level to where they're like, oh, they're not reaching. Yes, we can touch those guys. Now, if Tulane carries that momentum from beating USC, it's gonna be kind of tough. But let's not forget, we whooped up on them the year before.
Sure did.
So that's just a matter. That's a difference in a year. So I don't know if that's likely, coming up, but I'm just throwing that out there. It's possible. And we did it at Tulane, So I think I think a lot of, we're going to get context clues with roster construction, how the team look in the spring, the cohesiveness, and the edge that they prepare with. We're going to start getting a lot of context clues on what this team will be and how we come out and how unified we look against North Carolina A&T. And then if we go into that Georgia Southern game on the road, I'm really going to be looking at in-game adjustments. I'm going to be looking at game plan. I'm going to be looking at what kind of identity we're going to get from our personnel and what the staff decides to go with. And I think that's just going to, like, those first three games are so important as to who we are. And then we can really see, okay, what to expect. I know where to put my expectations at. I know whether I should be disappointed in said year or, like, hey man, we need to strive. We need to go for it. We got the right ingredients. We can do it. And I know I know him and his mindset and what he want to do. You heard him talk. This dude want to go to the college football playoffs by year 2.
Yeah.
So if you want to do that, then here you go. This is a slate to prove yourself. This is a slate to get ready for that. I mean, this is everything that he asked for. So here we are, and I want to look at this optimistically, and I want to say I'm going to put Georgia and Tulane as the ones that we lose. I'm going to say every other game is winnable depending on what we see early on.
Yeah, and I think you can get Tulane though. Like I wouldn't.
I really do. I mean,
too. First conference game. Yeah, I guess it kind of stinks coming after the Georgia game. You're going to be kind of wounded a little bit, but hey.
And they have Nicholls State the week before us at home.
Jimmy, stop! Like,
hey,
I'm just saying.
Real quick though, that was something I was going to bring up. Not Nicholls State, but I was going to say that if you notice the overall AAC schedule, nobody has a bye before playing UAB.
That's huge.
I feel like last year, UTSA had a bye week before playing UAB, and a couple others did too. I think Charlotte did. But yeah, you look at that. No weeknight. Well, the first game is a weeknight game, but we already knew that before the schedule dropped. That it was going to be a Thursday night opener. But no weeknight games, no Thursday night games. That North Texas game at the end might be flexed to Black Friday, but we will know that later. But yeah, it's huge. No team has a bye before the week of playing UAB, so it is huge for UAB. I think we hit on most of it. I think if you had to pinpoint, if you had to pick two games, in my opinion, just zooming out, looking at the schedule, I think number one is at Georgia Southern, week 2. I think that is the most important game because the week 2 slide, UAB's always struggled with week 2. If you can come in there 2-0, come out there and get a dub, that is huge. And the second one I was going to say is at Tulane, the conference opener. If you can somehow win that, like that could catapult this team to the next level quickly and early on in the AAC.
Yeah,
I was gonna throw Louisiana in there as the number 2, but I thought more about it. Like at Tulane, your conference opener, chance to make a statement is there. So at Georgia Southern and at Tulane, for me, February 21st are the 2 most important games on the schedule. And I know if there are any coaches listening, they're shaking their heads because, Coach Speak says North Carolina A&T, but I don't care, man. We saw UAB whoop up on Alabama A&M 100-0 last year, and then look like crap against Liberty. So
it didn't really tell us nothing,
nothing.
We got nothing from that. I'm like you. I think the 2 most important, and I'm going with Georgia Southern, and I'm going with Louisiana. I think those 2, because I think those are going to be the indicators of what we need to expect and what this team is. And they are 2 quality opponents that we can gather info from, and then we can see how this team competes, and we can see our identity, and we can see the amount of talent we have. And then going into the Georgia game, we can see if we kind of expect to compete. Like, are we going to go in there? Like, what's the identity of this team? Because if we go in there, we lose by 17 Louisiana, I'm like,
And with Georgia the next week, woo.
Yeah, well, guys, it's been good because we about to get our ass whooped this year, but we're going to support this team. But just let me know what my expectations should be. That's all I ask for. So,
and I would choose the Memphis game for the reason that we're going into the bye week and we're ending that really tough stretch. So, I think it's really important at that point in the season that we end that tough stretch strong and we go into that bye week coming off a win, much less in a renewed rivalry. So I'm excited about that game. I've certainly got that one penciled in for its importance as we prepare for that back into that stretch.
Great point. Yeah, because if UAB can get that dub before the bye week heading into the lighter part of the schedule, like that could be huge too. So that was a great point. Well, guys, that is your UAB football 2023 schedule. Again, go to blazervictory.com. There's an article up there just kind of detailing just a couple sentences about each opponent that UAB will play this next year. So go check that out. Guys, we will be back tomorrow for a basketball podcast, getting you guys ready for senior night as UAB basketball will battle Rice, and they'll also travel up to Bowling Green, Kentucky to take on the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers Saturday. So make sure, spread the word about blazervictory.com. Tell your friends, tell your family, blazervictory.com. And if you're not subscribed to the podcast, if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, hit that subscribe or follow button now so you don't miss any future episodes like our UAB basketball episode that will drop Thursday morning. But Darion, you want to send us out?
Yes, sir. Blazer Nation, let's ride.